Really? Then what would you want? A breakup or taking care of someone? The person who gave me this terrible choice was my husband, 15 years into our marriage. He has looked down on me and taken advantage of me for many years. Since I'm 43 years old and don't have many chances of getting married again, he probably doesn't expect me to choose divorce. He is making me make this terrible choice, even though he knows it's wrong. I let out a quiet sigh so my husband wouldn't hear. I no longer care about him, and he still doesn't know that. Even if we got a divorce, nothing would bother me. I took a deep breath as I watched my husband's mean grin. Then, to let out the anger that had been building up for a long time, I stared back at him intensely. My name is Joyce Hill. This spring I turned 43. I fell in love with Solomon and now we're married after 15 years. Solomon first met me when he came up to me at a bar I often went to. This bar is so hidden that I didn't think I'd see someone so young and cute here. Do you want to have a drink together? At first I thought he was silly, but as we talked more, I started to see his charm. Solomon paid close attention to what I had to say and always laughed happily. I liked his smile, and we ended up going out together. We chose to get married after 2 years. Is it true that he owes money? You shouldn't marry someone like that. You will have to deal with most of the bad things. I think he's hiding something, and it's not just the bill. That person is not someone I can trust with my precious daughter. After I introduced Solomon to my parents, they told me they didn't want us to get married. Solomon lost his dad when he was young, and it was hard for him to pay for college. He told them that he had taken out loans to pay for school and live, but my parents didn't believe him. Could he be falsifying something? Enough. I'm going to marry Solomon, even if you two don't like it. Even though my folks didn't want me to, I married Solomon. For this reason, this problem made my relationship with my parents worse. To be more specific, I was the one who grew apart from them. It's been 15 years since I married Solomon. I'm 43 years old now, but we've never had kids. Solomon doesn't treat me like a wife. He treats me like someone who does housework. At first, we were a loving couple. We used to say, "We'll have kids someday," even though we were both very busy. But the company I worked for went out of business just a year after we got married. Zelda, my mother-in-law, who was living apart from me at the time, made this idea to me while I was looking for a new job. Why don't you just stay home? That way, you'll quickly have children. Soon, show me my kids. After 6 months of marriage, my mother-in-law started to push us to have kids. She thought that the fact that my company had gone bankrupt was a great reason for me to stop looking for work. In all honesty, Solomon's pay alone isn't enough to cover everything. He is still paying off his college loans, so he can only help me with a small amount of my living costs. I didn't listen to Zelda's advice and found a new job anyway, but it seemed to have failed. After that, my wife's mother started calling me mean names. I really need to see my grandchildren soon, but Joyce doesn't get it at all. Oh, I should have been against the marriage. She said quietly in front of me, Solomon could have found someone much better for him. The sarcasm in her voice got even worse. What a useless daughter-in-law she is. Why can't you do this? I'm sorry. My mother-in-law calls me over every weekend to help with a huge pile of housework, like shopping, cleaning, cooking, and laundry. I'm in charge of all the housework. I do what she asks of me and help her, but she never thanks me. Instead, she only talks about how well I do housework. The food you make tastes awful. Even dishes from the store would be better, she says. She says, that's cutting corners, or the flavor is too strong when I buy ready-made meals. But I can't tell Solomon's mother what's bothering me, so I just put up with it. Even worse, Solomon has been influenced by his mother more and more, and now looks down on me. You changed jobs, which messed up your career. That's not your fault. But you can't make a living with that little pay, right? Do you get that? I need you to make at least $30,000 a year because I can't pay for you to live on my own. That's the norm. My pay was very low because I had just changed jobs. Solomon wasn't happy with this, so he told me I had to make more money. He also put a lot of pressure on me to do all the jobs around the house and deal with my mother-in-law properly. He doesn't do any chores when he gets home, and on the weekends he goes out and has fun. Solomon only gives me a few $100s a month to cover my living costs. He spends the rest on his own joys and hobbies. At some point, he paid off all of his student loan debt. Later, it was clear that these bills were caused by an addiction to gaming. He had been lying when he said he was having trouble in school. Since I paid for most of our living costs after we got married, he was able to get ahead financially and pay off his bills. But even after he paid off his bills, the amount he gave me for living costs was still small. To make things worse, Solomon blamed me for our poor living situation and said, "We're living like this because you don't earn more." Because of this stressed way of life, I passed out at work one day. The doctor said it was because of too much work. Solomon and his mother were mad that I had passed out from too much work when they went to the hospital. "You're not strong enough to fall off of this," they told me. "Can you really live like this?" I agree with what Solomon says. It's really sad to pass out from too much work. What if people think you're being pushed too far? It would make us look bad, she said. I had no energy left to argue, even though they didn't seem to care about me. Over time, their hard treatment made me more and more tired, and it became a normal part of my days. I put up with Solomon and his mother's bad behavior because I chose to marry Solomon anyway, even though my folks didn't want me to. It's been hard for me because I spoke out against my parents, and I can't give up now that things are getting tough. While enduring this, I suddenly realized that 15 years had passed since my marriage. During this time, Solomon and his mother's treatment of me has never improved. I've always been treated like their servant. I no longer have the energy to fight back. Recently, her health has worsened, and I've been called more frequently to take care of her. "Mother-in-law, you should go to the hospital," I said. I've been doing the household chores at her house every week, but about a month ago, I noticed that her complexion was bad. Today, she looked particularly unwell, giving orders in a harsh tone while sitting in her chair. Having been treated like a servant for years, I'm used to it, but I can't overlook someone who looks sick right in front of me. Still, she seemed to dislike my concern. "Stop playing doctor. I'll decide about my own health. Be quiet," she shouted, throwing a cup from the table in my direction. However, lacking strength, the cup didn't reach me and fell at her feet instead. "What are you doing? Pick up that cup and clean it up." Seemingly wanting to get away from me quickly, she staggered up from her chair and went into the next room. I silently wiped up the contents of the cup that had fallen to the floor. Well, she's so energetic, she must be fine, I thought. I had been discussing her health with Solomon, but he showed little interest. "Taking care of my mother is your job, isn't it? There's not much I can do if you tell me about it." Normally I say nothing, but this time I wanted to retort. "But she's your mother, isn't she?" Yet retorting wouldn't change the situation. If anything, it would just lead to Solomon complaining more. Lately, Solomon's return home has been getting later. I haven't had the chance to discuss her condition, and the days just passed by. Then, one day, everything changed. What? My mother-in-law was rushed to the emergency room? I received a call from the hospital while I was at the office. They had tried calling Solomon, but he didn't answer, so the call eventually came to me. I hurriedly wrapped up my work and headed to the hospital. She had collapsed while shopping at a local deli. According to the doctor, although her life was not in danger, She would need support for daily activities after being discharged. Could this really be happening? Until now, she had lived separately from us, and that distance was what made my difficult life somewhat bearable. But if we were to live together? I had endured her harassment over the past 15 years, but now I was filled with anxiety. If I were to live with her, would I be able to maintain my mental health? After hearing the situation at the hospital, I left her in the doctor's care and returned home. Solomon hadn't come to the hospital. He was waiting at home, and when I explained what had happened, he became angry. "Why didn't you take her to the hospital sooner? It's your fault that my mother ended up in this condition," he accused. I had repeatedly urged her to go to the hospital, but she wouldn't listen to me. I even consulted you about it, but you found it too bothersome and did nothing, I explained. "Really? Is this my fault?" I silently pondered. Solomon sighed heavily, then made an unbelievable suggestion. "Now that things have come to this, there's no choice but to have my mother live here. We'll sell her house and land. Of course, you will take on the caregiving. Using caregiving services would be too expensive, so I'm leaving all her care to you." "What? But then I won't be able to continue working," I protested. "What are you talking about? It's only natural that you continue with your job and the housework as before. Saying that you can't do your job or housework because of caregiving is just an excuse," he replied dismissively. Faced with Solomon's unreasonable remarks, I was simply stunned. Did he really think I could handle caregiving and household chores all by myself? "It's impossible," I muttered, the words slipping out unexpectedly. Solomon reacted sharply. "Huh. If we're going to take care of your mother here, we must share the responsibilities of household chores and caregiving. It's impossible for me to do everything alone." Solomon looked surprised at my rebuttal. Having spent the past 15 years mostly without defiance, not only he but I was surprised by my own reaction. Those spontaneous words highlighted how unrealistic his demands were. Solomon frowned and retorted, "Is that so? Then which would you prefer, divorce or caregiving? Choose either. I don't care." While saying this, Solomon gave an unpleasant smirk, imposing a tremendous choice on me. "You're not on good terms with your parents, and if we divorce, who will you rely on? It'll be difficult for a woman alone to live decently with such a low salary. If you leave me, that's the end. Without me, could you even survive?" Solomon's arrogance made something inside me snap. "All right then, I choose divorce. I'm moving out today. Why don't you ask your 23-year-old lover to take care of her?" Surprised by my unexpected response, Solomon let out a jesting tone. His voice sounded so pitiful that I almost laughed, but I held back. Laughing wouldn't help the situation. Instead, I pulled out something I had been hiding in my bag for a long time. "Here, take this." Puzzled, Solomon took the bulging brown envelope I offered him. As he checked the contents, his face gradually turned pale. "What is this?" Solomon's voice trembled. I answered calmly, "It's evidence of your affair with your 23-year-old lover." The envelope contained numerous photographs. In the photos, Solomon was seen intimately linking arms with a young woman. 6 months ago, when Solomon's return home had started to get later, I began to suspect his dishonesty. Though I hadn't yet obtained concrete evidence, his cheerful demeanor every day told me something was off. So I hired a detective and discovered that he was indeed having an affair. His affair partner was a 23-year-old stripper. He first visited the cabaret club as part of a business association. Solomon, inherently frivolous, had dated several women before our marriage, but it seemed that these women's issues had resolved after he shifted his interests elsewhere. Post-marriage, however, one day, invited to a strip club by a business contact, he met a woman who perfectly matched his ideals and fell for her instantly. Since then, He has been pouring his salary into that strip club, eventually forming an intimate relationship with the stripper. Your affair partner? She's cute and young. But do you think she can take care of your mother? Your mother likes to give orders, and she will be even more demanding after she's discharged, I said, pointing to the woman in the photos. I confronted Solomon. No, this is a misunderstanding. It was just a bit of fun, not an affair, he stammered. His previous confidence vanished, and he began to offer a feeble excuse. Oh, just a bit of fun, huh? Yes, that's right. I didn't intend to do anything serious, he muttered. Cutting off his excuses, I sighed heavily and stopped the conversation. Then I pulled out my smartphone and played an audio file. I'll divorce my wife soon, and then I'll marry you right after. I'll protect you for the rest of your life. Hearing Solomon's sweet voice from the smartphone, I grimaced with discomfort. Meanwhile, Solomon, pale-faced, stared at me, demanding to know why I had such a thing. This is just a part of the evidence collected by the detective agency. There are loads of your call records with her, and whether or not you were serious doesn't matter. Having an affair with someone else while married to me is clearly infidelity, I said. While saying that, I selected a photo from the stack of evidence and showed it to Solomon. In the photo, they were captured entering a hotel, arms linked intimately. Do you want to see more? I can show you plenty of other evidence. Are you still planning to make excuses? Solomon shuddered at my challenging question. He probably realized that he could no longer talk his way out of this. Changing tactics, he began to accuse me. Hey, did you use my money to hire a detective? Using my hard-earned money for such wasteful spending? Give me back my money. Caught off guard by this unexpected attack, I was momentarily at a loss for words. Solomon seized this opportunity to further his verbal assault. Do you know how much it costs to hire a detective? Using my money for such a ridiculous investigation? You're the worst wife. Well, if you return the money with interest, I might forgive you this time. Seeing Solomon twist the situation for his own benefit, I was utterly astounded and asked, when did you become so petty? Struggling to maintain my composure, I calmly retorted to Solomon, I used my own savings for the detective. I haven't touched your money at all, so no worries there. That can't be true. There's no way you have that much money to hire a detective. Or, did you not know that I was recently promoted to department manager? I'm earning quite a sum now. Solomon was visibly shocked by this unexpected revelation. After graduating from college, the company where I had worked for a long time went bankrupt due to the economic downturn. In my next job, I started from scratch as a basic sales clerk. Despite leveraging my experience, I was initially placed in a sales administration role. However, there was a system in place that promised additional bonuses for success, not just a base salary. Content at first with the administrative position, I faced Solomon's complaints about earning more and directly requested my boss for a transfer to sales. The sales role was challenging, but I embraced the challenge and became the first person to transition from an administrative to a sales role at the company. At the time, the company was seriously short-staffed in sales, and help was desperately needed. After handing over the sales admin tasks to a newly joined female employee, I started focusing entirely on sales. The sales job was indeed tough, but it turned out to be surprisingly suitable for me. I achieved results that matched those of my male colleagues and gradually earned recognition, leading to multiple promotions. Now I hold the position of department manager. While many women interrupt their careers for childbirth and child care, I was able to continue working because Solomon and I didn't have children. This allowed me to build and advance my career. Had we had children, my career might have been interrupted, and divorcing Solomon could have been more complicated. Why didn't you tell me something so important? Solomon asked. I tried to tell you, But whenever I tried to talk, you hardly listened, I replied. When I decided to transition from sales administration to a sales position, I attempted to share this with Solomon. However, he said, "Work talk, spare me. I don't want to hear about it when I come home. I'm tired." And with that, he never listened to the end of my story. With each promotion, I tried again to tell Solomon, but he never seemed interested in listening. Despite his constant demands for me to earn more, he showed no real interest in what kind of work I was doing or how much I was actually earning. It was last winter when I saw the amount of the bonus I received from the company, and a thought struck me. If I'm handling such a large amount of money, I could live comfortably on my own. I had never thought that way before, but at that moment, it just came to me naturally. Perhaps I had been harboring some dissatisfaction with my situation for a long time. I had married Solomon despite strong opposition from my parents, telling myself that I must overcome any difficulties to stay with him. However, even with such determination, there are limits to what one can endure. After 15 years of marriage, I finally reached that limit. Following this realization, I decided to divorce and hired a detective for that purpose. While I had suspected Solomon's dishonest behavior, I had not yet taken any concrete steps until now. I had not considered divorce as an option, convincing myself that I should stay with Solomon no matter how hard it was. However, the moment I decided to divorce, I took action. I finally obtained proof of the affair, and now I am confronting Solomon. Solomon has not treated me as an equal. I was merely a convenient tool, routinely belittled and treated like a servant. Before our marriage, he was kind and listened to me. However, at some point, he changed into this cold person. Perhaps I just hadn't noticed before, but maybe Solomon was always like this. Who would want to stay with such a person? Normally, it's impossible. That's why I chose divorce. I definitely do not want to take care of a mother-in-law who has never valued me from the start. Even if offered money, I would refuse. After her collapse, my mother-in-law's body became frail, but her mind remained sharp. If I were to care for her at home after her discharge, it's certain she would treat me more like a servant than before. I would consider caregiving if she respected and appreciated me. But expecting such an attitude from her is unrealistic. When Solomon confidently forced me to choose between caregiving and divorce, my mind was already made up. I should tell you, I earn more than you do. Despite your lack of substantial contributions to our living expenses, the fact you never questioned our lifestyle shows how oblivious you are. The reason you could eat every day is because I was earning. It seems you still don't understand, but you're the one who would be in trouble if we divorced. Solomon, who has always looked down on me, is clearly upset to learn that I earn more. His face turns red, his lips pressed tightly together, and he trembles with anger as he glares at me. As I watch him in disbelief, he blurts out something unexpected. "Fine, I get it. I want a divorce from such an arrogant woman like you. In exchange, give me half of your savings. There's such a thing as division of property." His foolishness makes me look up to the sky in frustration, but I quickly return my gaze to him and deliver a further blow with a cold voice. "If you're going to claim division of property, you'll need to speak to my lawyer." "What? A lawyer?" Solomon asks, surprised. I've already contracted a lawyer to handle the division of assets. If Solomon had said he would take care of his mother's caregiving himself, I would have reconsidered the divorce and put the lawyer on hold. Originally, I had intended to overlook Solomon's infidelity and get through this tough period together. I hadn't expected him to make such a proposal, but it ended up this way. Solomon clearly became flustered the moment he heard the word lawyer. A lawyer? Isn't this something we can handle ourselves? There's no need to go that far. You've never listened to me properly and have ignored me all along. That's why I think it's impossible for us to resolve this alone. Moreover, I want you to take responsibility for everything that's happened, and involving a professional is the best way to ensure that," I said. Solomon looked around anxiously with a pale face. "Did you really think you did nothing wrong?" I asked. At that, Solomon's face contorted even more. He had demeaned and treated me like a servant, but he seemingly never anticipated being retaliated against in such a manner. His selfish actions made me regret marrying him and resent my own choices. "Then I'll start packing. You figure out the rest." As I said this and began to leave, Solomon suddenly reached out and grabbed the hem of my clothes. "Wait, let go." "I don't have any money." I frowned at Solomon's sudden confession. "I got obsessed with the stripper and bought her lots of designer goods to get her attention. Because of that, my savings are almost gone. That's why I don't have any money to give you. Recently, I've even been borrowing a bit from my mother's pension." "Unbelievable! You've been using your own mother's pension." This was the first I'd heard of it, but it seemed like something Solomon would do. A thought suddenly struck me. "You never talked about living together before, but as soon as your mother got sick, you suggested it. Not really for her sake, but for your own benefit, right? Are you trying to sell our house and land to get the money?" At my words, Solomon awkwardly diverted his gaze. Nausea stirred within me, knowing my husband could act so calculatingly. "You're truly despicable to do such things for your own gain. I've been treated horribly by your mother, but I do feel sorry for her having such a son. However, while I might feel a hint of sympathy, I'm not about to forgive all her past actions." I shook off Solomon's hand and declared boldly, "It doesn't matter that your savings are depleted. If necessary, I'll have your wages garnished to cover the costs. I have a divorce lawyer who's experienced in these matters." "Wait, please reconsider. I'm begging you," Solomon pleaded. "It's impossible," I said firmly. No matter how firmly I refused, Solomon showed no signs of giving up easily. He knelt down as if atoning for a grave sin, desperately begging for forgiveness. "I'm truly sorry. From now on, I'll change and start over. I'll help with my mother's care, of course, and I'll actively assist with the household chores. I'll never cheat again. If you divorce me, my life has no future," he pleaded. It seemed he finally understood that his daily life couldn't function without me, but it was too late. "How can I believe your words now after years of betrayal? You are incredibly naive and detached from reality. I am determined to go through with this divorce by any means necessary," I stated resolutely. "No way!" Solomon exclaimed in shock. "What you are about to face is the natural consequence of your continuous disregard for me. Just quietly accept it and be prepared," I told him. A look of complete despair crossed Solomon's face, and he collapsed weakly to the floor. Following that, we formally proceeded with the divorce and successfully settled the division of assets with the help of a lawyer. Solomon decided to take care of his mother and sold the house and land she owned. He then used the proceeds from the sale to pay the alimony. After the divorce, Solomon, now left only with the stripper he'd been involved with, proposed marriage to her. "My wife has left me, and I've lost everything. You're all I have left. Help me, marry me, and take care of my mother." However, the stripper firmly rejected his proposal. She was only using Solomon's emotions for her business. Confused by genuine affection, she sternly rejected him, insisting he never come to the club again. When Solomon proposed marriage to the young stripper, intending for her to take care of his mother, it was an unbearable request for her. Solomon, once charming, seemed to have lost his ability to understand women over time. 15 years had passed, and the man he once was no longer existed. Ultimately, His relationship with the stripper he met at the strip club ended with him being banned from the establishment. All the money and time he had invested there vanished without yielding anything. I did not demand an apology from the stripper when I found out his affair partner worked at the strip club. I intuitively understood it was part of her professional behavior. I am grateful to her for cooperating to smooth the divorce process. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was initially pleased to hear about our divorce, but found reality far from her expectations. After being discharged from the hospital, she suffers under Solomon's inadequate care and repeatedly pleads for my return. Why did you divorce Joyce? You are the reason I am suffering so much, she lashes out at her son. She seems utterly unaware that she was part of the reason for our divorce. If she had been more understanding, she might not have left Solomon alone, and perhaps we would not have divorced. However, my mother-in-law is very self-centered, much like Solomon. Solomon is in a terrible position when it comes to taking care of his mother, because he can't afford to pay someone to do it. When I think of this as the long overdue justice they deserve for how they treated me, I sometimes think this is still pretty light. It looks like bad things are going to happen to them in the future. Whatever the future holds for them, I don't feel any particular way about it. I think it's their due, without much feeling. After the split, I went to my parents' house to truly say I was sorry for what I had done in the past. I thought we might grow apart, but my parents accepted me back with open arms, which was not what I expected. My parents told me, "If you're happy, then we're happy. Yes, you will always be our beloved daughter." "Your happiness is the most important thing to us," my mom said. I told my parents, "Thank you so much, Mom and Dad." It's true that my parents have forgiven me from the start, and I'm thankful for that. I have started a new step in my life by renting a new room close to my parents' house. My job is still very busy, but not having to think about Solomon or Zelda has made my life a lot easier. I'm going to be more careful when picking a partner in the future, even if I get the chance to get married again. But I think it would be nice to be alone for now. I'm thinking about loving being on my own. I'm grateful for these calm days,